So basically the same. Now the Caitlyn comes through as well. So if it's Nah here, I think you just pivot and ban away the Rumble. They banned Jhin here, as you mentioned earlier. I don't think you need to ban Jhin. Ooh. It's not the first pick priority. Vitality may still go here because we know they favor the Tahm Kench. We know they have the Olaf to play into the Rek'Sai, so now we're at the same point. They may still, for Ninjas in Pyjamas, go Rek'Sai Thresh. There is nothing wrong with Rek'Sai Thresh. The problem is that top lane matchup.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like if you're NIP, you've got to find some way of propping up your top lane. But this time, actually, Ninjas in Pyjamas have decided to take away Vander's Tahm Kench instead of the Thresh. And for HeaQ, they lock in a Kha'Zix. Okay,
very different out of Ninjas in Pyjamas, and I like it. I like this adjustment here. We spoke about how there's nothing wrong with Thresh and Rek'Sai. Well, look, you pick up the Tahm Kench. It's a takeaway from Vitality. They may still just go the Thresh here. And this is now, while a little bit later on into the game, a little bit of a farming early jungler. Kha'Zix can obviously output significant amounts of damage. And HeaQ likely to try and duel against Djoko.
All right, so with the timer ticking down, it's Vitality who ends up picking up the Thresh for Vander. And now this is still a pick that can be very, very solid for them in setting up a lot of plays. And you know, Vander, back in the day, especially, you got to rewind a little bit, several years back, but we used to call him Vander Life. I mean, he had some seriously good hooks as well.
Yeah, came onto the scene and was known for his Thresh play. Now, will it be that Olaf here against the Kha'Zix? Maybe not necessary to bring it out right now. There are a lot of junglers that can do okay into the Kha'Zix, and it's AD carry they look to.
Yeah, bird's the word right now for Vitality. So Steelback gets a chance on the Xayah. They don't need to worry about Rakan as they've already picked their support.
And here's where the punish comes and why they made the adjustment here, because there are enough junglers that Nip can't fully ban out Djoko, but there aren't enough top laners for Profit realistically to have a solid matchup into the Rumble right now. Vitality may just ban the Renekton, may ban something like a Galio. It's not the best pick, but can do okay into Rumble in the top lane.
Well, when those have been banned away, Profit has turned towards the likes of the J4. We'll see if maybe that comes out. I don't know about into this Rumble, but right now we're still looking at AD carry bans because they've banned the Lucian as a mid laner, I guess. I was like, wait a second.
Look at that as a mid laner. Camille is another pick that we have seen played into the Rumble, and again, it's one that controls the side lane the later you go. There are still matchups that are good, but none that are like, ooh, this just beats Rumble. Like, Nah basically wins almost all points of the game.
I feel like we need to see HeaQ honestly giving a lot more attention earlier into the top lane, because last time he was always 2 steps too late. He was trying to get there, but Djoko was always there first. I want to see what changes this time around. Still in bans, though, because NIP have 5 more seconds to figure out who else they want to remove.
Will it be the Kog'Maw that we saw banned out by Vitality in the last game? So it's the Talia. NIP that may say that they're looking to pick up first the top laner here and then wait for a mid lane matchup. They don't want too many blind pickable mid laners available. Well, when you got Orianna, you got LeBlanc, you got Syndra, there's enough that Vitality can find something to play with the Corki as well still there.
Yeah, there's a lot of options for Vitality, and last time, of course, they had the Lucian that was kind of just in the holding pattern. This time, the Corki's actually banned away by Vitality themselves. So looking for something a little more explosive.
Ooh, this would be very reminiscent of Vitality last week. The Shen, the Tahm Kench coming through.
I like this submarine right now. Yeah. This is actually a really scary pick composition, and it's not bad at skirmishing.
Can be difficult to play, though, here, because, of course, Shen, now one of these top laners that can't carry necessarily on his own. Now, Profit isn't going to be the carry of this game. This is going to be based more around Nagne and HeaQ. Now they pick a neutralized mid lane so that Nagne can't necessarily get anything that basically wins against Orianna with the Lucian ban, the Corki ban as well. Vitality may have neutralized this playstyle out from NIP before we even see the mid laner that Nagne is going to bring us.
Oh boy, that's never what you want to see before your mid laner even gets a chance to take his pick. The Olaf is locked in for Djoko once again, still comfort time, and NIP are eyeballing the Syndra for Nagne.
It would be a fine pick. So with the LeBlanc, these mid laners that you can just basically play into anything. It's
some fun. It's
not going to be the Pantheon. Seeing people play that champion in solo queue, though, not as a mid laner. No. So if we do see it picked up, I wouldn't be too surprised if somebody's got a cheese strat.
Well, not in this game anyways. Nagne's going for the assassin, so he's going back to the roots on the LeBlanc right now. They have some solid laning potential, I think really the question is, whose lane is HeaQ really going to be visiting a lot more? Because Prophet on the Shen is not really going to be the one they want to snowball.
Yeah, you don't also want to fight a 2v2 against Rumble and Olaf. We saw in the last game that you didn't want to fight it, and there was a Renekton in that 2v2 as well. Now you got a Shen not really offering too much in that trade, so likely HeaQ towards the bottom lane perhaps with HeaQ and Sprattel around the mid lane, and with Nagne. They're going to have to get Nagne or HeaQ ahead. They can't afford not to be playing with an early game lead here, because Vitality, look at their late game. Orianna, you've got Xayah, who scales very well into the late game as well. And on top of that, earlier on, you've got that Rumble, you've got the Olaf, you've got pick potential coming out from Vander.
Oh, yeah. There's definitely a lot going for the Vitality comp, and they showed up very solidly in game number 1, but we'll see if they are able to do again. Or maybe the Ninjas in Pyjamas, just maybe, they get themselves one of those leads that we saw the other week against Unicorns of Love. Things could start turning, and we might have ourselves a game 3.
Yeah, very strong protection comp when you look at a Shen shield, Tahm Kench for an AShe. You've got good amount of crowd control coming from the lineup as well, and then damage to supplement it. But that damage needs to be ahead. That damage needs to be in this game for the Ninjas in Pyjamas. Otherwise, it'll be yet another series going 0-2. They'll be 0-8
and
in series.
Like we talked about, this is one of the more important games that Ninjas in Pyjamas can play up against Vitality, a team closer to them in the standings. Will they be able to do it? We're on to Summoner's Rift for the second time today.
Second time of week 6. We've seen a lot of these meta changes that arose throughout Rift Rivals, and one of the champions we saw struggle at Rift Rivals, particularly for Fnatic, was this Shen. So I was very unhappy that he couldn't get a lot done. So now we have to look at how Prophet can play around this Shen. In the top side, generally doesn't have a whole lot of 1 versus 1 side lane impact. Sure, he can push back a wave a little bit. He's not going to be solo killing Cabochard unless Cabochard makes a mistake.
Well, sometimes what you need to be able to do is go outside that comfort zone. We did see Prophet play 1 game of Shen already this split. Spoiler alert, didn't win. But maybe, just maybe they can
I mean, they've only won one game,
yeah.
right? Like, most of the champions you can pick up and be like,
that
hey,
stat.
Didn't win.
All right, so Vitality are kind of going for a similar strategy as before, but this time they're only sending 3 down to the bottom.
But look,
HeaQ and Sprattel are cut off.
This is a reaction to last game. This is a reaction to last game because they know Nipper likely already in the bush.
Oh, wait, hold on. There's a quick flash out of HeaQ right now, but he has to use heal already.
That was anticlimactic.
Oh, but 2-for-1 summoner trade. That's not bad if you're Vitality.
No, it's actually fine.
2 for 0.
3. 3 summoners used for NIP, 4-0, so it's actually fine. I mean, that basically should win Vitality the laning phase.
Great.
You got a Thresh against a flashless AShe and no exhaust. That's difficult to say.
Say that 5 times fast, yeah.
Obviously, Tahm Kench is there to devour, so that should mean there's no kill coming through, theoretically. But look, Vander took Ignite. He's not going exhaust. He doesn't need that against the Tahm Kench.
Yeah, that's a rough start.
Kill people.
That's a rough start if you're NIP right now. So Steelback and Vander are going to be able to have their pick of the bottom lane. HeaQ going in for an invade, but Djoko is already there with the red buff. Blast Cone taken.
Oh, he saw him go. He's going to let him tank the blue buff and then go in. But I think HeaQ knows something's up. Because look, Cabochard left lane. They maybe went a little early on that and the play was rumbled. That was a way worse pun than I meant it to be.
That's okay, we all have them from time to time. But HeaQ's going to be a little delayed now as he goes back towards his own red buff. Djoko finishes off the blue. He's going to go meet him.
Yeah, now Djoko did this last week against Pride Stalker, but on Rek'Sai and died. So please, that's not what we want to see.
Well, what we do want to see in this mid lane is some action early on, but HeaQ has already smited that red buff up top, so we'll head back to the mid in just a little bit because I do want to focus on what Nagne is able to get done this game. And, fish on a hook right now, Vander.
Well, now we're playing the game of cooldowns, where Devour, long cooldown, hook, it hit a champion, not a long cooldown, so flash into the hook, may come out at Vander if they can catch him between the time where Sprattel's Devourer is back up. So that's an option, but it has been long enough that Devourer is back available. It's 14 seconds on that cooldown now.
All right.
And actually, Death Sentence is longer cooldown right now because it's 20 seconds base, 3 seconds less if it hit a champion, so...
Very nuanced bottom lane.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, Nagne trying to pressure out Nukeduck. He actually forces out the flash. That's a good start to things. And you could see that HeaQ was actually in the area already, and I think that Nukeduck was able to spot him. That's why he wasn't taking any risks. Sprattel on an early roam, they've actually decided to not push up in the lane as much and instead invest in trying to keep all eyes on Vitality.
The problem for that is they're trying to assist HeaQ in this early game with how aggressive Djoko's being, but Sprattel has left HeaQ, who is now under half the CS that Steelback has in this lane, with no flash, so he has to play under his tower. So at the expense of helping HeaQ, they're like, I would know, HeaQ, you're just going to have to weather this storm for a little bit longer. And
knowing this, though, they're actually just going to go in and try and pressure out HeaQ, but he's already cleared through this jungle, so Vander's a little late to be able to do this. But a lot of shenanigans here.
Yeah, it's been an awkward beginning to the game for both teams. Nukeduck not having his flash means he can't really afford to push up too far and can't quite roam with the team as effectively. And they've really been trying to track Djoko. Now they know he's not on the Krugs on the bottom side, and with no camps on the top side to take, he's probably around mid lane right now, and that's why Djoko reveals himself and just runs away, doesn't really commit much into the mid lane.
So HeaQ has been able to start stacking up the farm. He nearly evens out what Steelback was bringing because of the roam that Steelback and Vander had earlier on. But all eyes still had to be on HeaQ. He's heading up towards the top. He actually took a stop, really, to look at that Scuttle Crab. But meanwhile, down to the bottom, Djoko is making moves here and looking for Sprattel, who has his flash back up. Great health. He's going to need it. And that's going to be the end of that engage, and a ghost burn by Djoko. Yeah,
without the Feather Storm, and we're obviously at level 4, Steelback can't reliably get that crowd control working for him, but still is able to put a lot of damage down. You got to look always at that bottom side just in case. TP was just used mid, but here's a hook on HeaQ.
Oh, another one for Vander here, and he gets a double flay back, but Steelback can't quite connect on the double daggers.
Yeah.
That means they're not going to be able to put out any additional damage here.
What we were looking at just before that play is Djoko and HeaQ and how active they've been when it comes to that First Blood participation, because the crown of First Blood King has kind of been passed around a couple of times here. It was Jankos, Djoko had it a little bit in spring and maybe the beginning of summer, and now HeaQ has basically for a while been the only factor for his team that has been reliable on First Blood. He was up to now 2 out of every 3 First Bloods for his team he has participated in. This was way higher a couple of weeks back before some of their last series.
Absolutely. Well, do you count it for being on the other side of the First Bloods? Because last game it definitely was not so much in his favor, but right now we're still at a game that's had a lot of attempts, but no kills to start things off. We're only 6 minutes in. There's obviously plenty of time, but a lot of strange trading back and forth. It's kind of hard to predict early games that go so wonky.
And some of the window for punishment on the flash being down is now closed. HeaQ has his flash available, but look at this with Vitality looking towards the top side. You're looking to see if they can actually set up a dive here properly. They're kind of bringing Nukeduck through. He did just walk over a ward, and they're clearing one out. So Prophet should know. And look, Nagne uses that clone up in the top side, basically tells Vitality that they know they're coming for this play. So Prophet is just going to back away, leave the tower, and again for Vitality, they're going to try and push down to try and get first tower blood for themselves.
Yeah, well, it looks like we got to pause as things are coming in here, but that is a strange lack of reaction, honestly, on the side of NIP. It seemed like they just kind of went back, shopped as normal, and saw the movement up top, but didn't actually either immediately race to counter it or to race down towards the bottom side.
Yeah, and as we see HeaQ and Sprattel trying to cross over as well, they are actually trying to regroup on this play. They saw it coming, as we said, the Nagne utilizing that Mimic in the laning phase. We are just in a brief pause, though. Didn't seem to come from anything like a fight, which is a good thing.
No, it's very, very rare that we actually see a pause just kind of coming out in the middle of nowhere. Usually it's like, wait a minute, what did that happen? I think that was a bug or something. But this time, a little more human error. Looks like somebody spilled a drink.
The cup was tilted.
Yeah.
Hopefully
well, better than the player, I guess,
from this, because obviously they're down in the series. And we talked about how important this is for them in the standings. Currently without a series win, only 1 game win to their name, and Vitality sat on the opposite side of the groups, obviously in different groups, but Vitality sat in 4th spot. You need to beat the teams in 4th if you want to get up from 5th place.
Absolutely.
Like NIP are right now. You cannot afford to let this opportunity go.
No, can't let it pass you by, and you do not want to lose 0-2, another without getting a single win on the books. Now, we can see the reaction here. Nagne is coming up. He's going to get spotted by this ward, and the tower's only going to go down to half health as the rest of NIP have been able to scramble to the position. Double taunt out. Prophet is able to get them. Vander does tank a tower shot, but nobody else from NIP are going to respond to this. Instead, they're making moves mid.
It was a decent response out of NIP. I know we were discussing how they weren't responding. They were moving Sprattel and HeaQ through the top side to try and react, but Nagne was able to get out of lane. Nukeduck was stuck in lane himself. He now has his flash available, keep in mind. So he's not quite the sitting duck.
Okay, that one was pretty bad too.
Yeah, that one was bad. I saw it there and I was like,
I mean, you can't not say it. You've committed already.
Yeah.
All right, but what HeaQ was able to do off of all this was take away a red buff. Now he's looking to start off on the Ocean Drake, so at least they can get some neutral objectives that they were completely disallowed last time.
But look at what Vitality are doing. They're like, okay, it didn't work top side. Let's try it bottom side. They're going to think we're going back top lane. Let's go and try and push bot tower down. Steelback and Vander are going to join in with Cabochard. This is funny. You don't normally see a swap be unsuccessful in the top lane and then try exactly the same thing. Submarine!
Here we go, looking for Djoko. Oh, the taunt doesn't land, and the shockwave pulls back too. But Nagne is still able to flash in and dash in for a pretty sick first blood.
Hang on, though. Here comes Vander.
All right, Vander gets the play back onto. They're managing to pull in HeaQ. And they equalize on kills. Now Cabochard's coming through, throws down the equalizer, but most of it's dodged away, as was the Electro Harpoon.
Just trying to get cut through the bush, didn't put it up through the jungle, so realistically would have been difficult to actually get the kill on top of that, but Cabochard maybe a little bit of a miss. What would you call it? Orientation on the vector skill shot of a...
I mean, it's not the easiest one to land.
No, it's not.
You see so many top-tier equalizers that you kind of forget that it actually is a very difficult skill to land correctly all the time.
But here's a top-tier submarine. HeaQ goes in. Taunt doesn't quite land, but at this point, Djoko's so low. Nagne has to use a lot to get there, but gets the kill, importantly for himself. Now, HeaQ does have flash in this exchange, but they don't see Vander coming. Flash flay, hook lands. There's a 3 feathers stacking, even though they were only level 5. Didn't need the ult for that. Easy pickup onto HeaQ in response. So, back and forth trading from both of these teams.
And now we see 3 members of NIP on the bottom side trying to rush down this tower, but it looks like Vitality should have it a little faster, even with only 2. We finally start to see some towers traded, but at least NIP are able to capitalize and get themselves some objectives as well. This is what they weren't able to do last time. It's already a very different game number 2.
Yeah, there's a knock-on of... Oh, let's talk about Nukeduck here.
Yeah, he's caught. We saw overextension last time. And we see it this time too, but he doesn't die.
Yeah, he knows he has Djoko on the top side. Vander was there to give him the lantern if he did survive long enough. So we saw the equalizer miss in the mid lane exchange. Now, if they had had that available, Cabochard probably could have defended bottom tower and maybe held Vitality at an even game, having got that tower first blood for themselves. But the tower game in this one is even between Vitality and Ninjas in Pyjamas.
Yeah, and it was so different from what we saw last time around, because in game 1, it was so topsy-turvy, and we didn't really expect that to be the case with the way NIP have been getting pretty solid towers in the early game against their opponents on average.
And one of the things that NIP were doing well in general was not only getting towers, but giving up fewer towers than a lot of teams in the league. NIP were actually good at playing that defensive style, whereas in the first game, Vitality had secured a tower, and NIP were left really wanting a tower for so long. It was, what, 33 minutes in?
A lot of that was the bulk of the goal difference,
They scored their first tower kill in the bottom lane from Prophet, and that was when they lost an inhibitor tower. It wasn't even a worthwhile trade.
I mean, you did say they were going to lose it either way.
Yeah, that's true.
Isn't that worth? All right. Nagne's caught Djoko, but he does have Ragnarok on, which means they can't really lock him up. He's able to walk away for free here. Now, at the cost of quite a lot of health, but dangerous Olaf when he's low.
And HeaQ has actually managed to not only catch up, but get the CS lead, despite the fact that, remember, he walked into lane with no flash at level 1.
Or heal.
Then fell down basically to half the CS of Steelback off the initial waves of minions. And then Vitality started the lane swap shenanigans, and they looked to go top side, looked to go bottom side. Now it's NIP looking for the bottom side as Cabochard has no tower there to keep him safe.
Ooh, HeaQ is going to hop right over the wall as Cabochard was trying to play Ring Around the Rosie. He flashes that same wall himself as throws down an equalizer, but Prophet is incoming, and there are no friends.
Arrow.
The AShe arrow coming from downtown, and he dodges it, but he can't dodge Prophet for long. HeaQ coming in, a hop, a skip, a jump, and Prophet gets the kill.
Not quite double lift. Double lift makes it look way easier. Cabochard with a sidestep, but Sprattel, here comes the submarine again.
Fighting over this Rift Herald here. Prophet, he's doing double time right now, but they are sending feathers right into him. Can they steal this Rift Herald away?
They're waiting for the eye to open.
Reset.
Where is it? It's not, yeah, it's going to reset.
Oh, dear.
Oh, that's sad. Vitality were hanging around to see if they could get an eye open on the back and kill it, but because it wasn't aggroed onto anybody, it just resets back. Oh, that's unfortunate.
Prophet is able to dodge out from Vander's hook now, and can they actually turn it around? Here comes the Abyssal Voyage. NIP are all over the map this game with these globals. They got a root down, and Vander is going to be left for dead. Sprattel swallows him up.
And that's exactly what we were talking about, this NIP composition being able to do. You've got the Shen, you've got the Tahm Kench. Last game, we didn't see Vitality utilize the Tahm Kench until well past level 8, and in this game, we've seen 2 Shen ultimates, an Abyssal Voyage, we've seen roams out of NIP to try and be active on the map, the Ashe arrow being used. They are realistically just throwing everything out when it's available and seeing what they can pick up.
Yeah, and this is the start of what we saw them able to do against the Unicorns of Love in week number 5. Can they keep the snowball rolling? Because now they got the Rift Herald. They were looking for Djoko. They forced his Ragnarok defensively.
Yeah, forced his ult. Now NIP are going to recall, and they will have the Rift Herald, which is such a good tool at breaking through the likes of an Orianna in the middle lane. And Nagne is struggling, despite getting the kill. We talked about how this Orianna realistically doesn't win matchups and realistically doesn't lose matchups either. Well, Nagne has spent a lot of time out of the lane, heavily down in CS. As is the top lane, Vitality is still managing to hold on with the CS leads.
Oh, they are for sure, but it's close in the gold game everywhere but one. HeaQ, the investment that NIP put into him to try to get him ahead when they knew their lanes were having trouble has started to pay off because he has himself about 900 gold over his counterpart. Djoko has not been able to roll nearly as fast here, and it hasn't panned out so much in items, but Kha'Zix is one of those champions that when he pops off, oh, you best start running the other way.
Yeah, HeaQ will be able to output a significant amount of damage, but look at the level disparity as well. It's not only gold, level 9 to level 7. Realistically, anytime HeaQ finds Djoko, it'll go in his favor, and Djoko has been denied heavily these engaged potentials, these attempts at a steal on the Rift Herald out of Nagne, and what we need to look for next is the next Abyssal Voyage, the next Stand United coming out from Prophet, because this is the kind of time where it could heavily swing the game. It's going to be Rift Herald into a skirmish play potentially out of NIP, and if that's the route they go, they could break Vitality open here.
I want to see NIP using the Rift Herald a little bit more proactively than Vitality. I mean, Vitality kind of picked it up last time because it was free, right? Like NIP kind of fought for it. So let's see what they end up doing with it, because there's a tower down on the bot in the inner. If they want to send it down there where Prophet is, they could go to mid and try to knock that one down. That's a pretty conventional strat, but they need to bring a lot more people to the party.
So the wave of minions that is currently making its way through mid lane is not a cannon lane. To ensure, like, quote-unquote maximum efficiency, it's always good to throw it out with the cannon wave because it's difficult to actually break through such a defensive line. But then you've also got to push through your opponent's minion line, kill their cannon minion, and now look, Vitality is saying, okay, you are going to Rift Herald us soon. Let's get this fight in the middle lane started when we have the numbers advantage.
Yeah, Vitality wanted to make the play here, but they still need a little bit of time, right? They've got themselves a couple of key items. Cabochard now has Leandri's Torment. The Morellonomicon's been finished for Nukeduck. But as you said in Champ Select, this is a scaling composition. They want to be able to out-level, outscale NIP, and obviously they need time when their jungler's down a level still. But they're starting to lose these towers like we saw on the opposite side last game.
Yeah, and with the teleport on the top side, Nagne is trying to play this 1-3-1 setup with the rest of NIP, but the mid lane matchup has not been going his way. In this game, Nukeduck achieved his highest CSD at 15 for this split, and Nagne was handed his lowest CSD at 15 for this split. So heavily, Nukeduck has been fine. And look, we were talking about how mid lane Rift Herald's great at breaking through an Orianna. Well, HeaQ's putting it top lane because it was about to expire by the looks of things.
So same Rift Herald usage as last time.
Same kind of, and teams are doing this, and it's not exactly an efficient use of this Rift Herald because that Rumble is going to stand there. Vitality are going to engage top because they had a global announcement say Rift Herald was spawned, and it definitely wasn't in the middle lane.
Yep.
And now they get the tower for themselves.
All right, so NIP dropping the ball a little bit here, and now with the Rift Herald on, it's going to go charging. Cabochard, he might just give up the Ghost on this one because he knows he's not going to be able to fight against the Herald, the Wave, and Nagne all at the same time. So at least they equalize, but Vitality got the tower anyways.
Yeah, it actually ends up being okay because of the damage that Nagne had done already. I guess the question is, how do you value the Infernal Drake right now, as Vitality were looking for it? That is the next port of call.
It's going to land onto Vander as Steelback at Featherstorm to dodge it away, and the Flay's not going to be there either, with Shook picking up kill number 1. Djoko, Ragnar rocking, but it's Steelback that's caught by Prophet, and he gets a kill himself. Now Nukeduck going to pull in too with the shockwave, but it does not do nearly enough damage, and all of a sudden NIP chasing Vitality through the jungle, and these guys are looking real dead right now.
Nukeduck manages to get out alive, and we talked about how it's going to be Rift Herald play into skirmish. We thought it was both going to be centered around the middle lane, but unfortunately for Vitality, that wasn't the play that came out of NIP. It was Rift Herald top side, get the tower, then take a fight on the bottom side, utilize this global presence. NIP utilizing the Ashe arrow, getting it. Steelback, a little bit selfish on the old dodge there. Didn't want to take the Ashe arrow because he knew. Oh, careful. Ooh. Careful. People don't like that term.
Yeah, all right, well.
So, I mean,
let's just move on.
Obviously, Steelback is right to dodge the Ashe arrow. Like, that's actually fine that he dodges. The problem is Prophet is catching him from behind, and Vander, because the arrow hits him, kills him. And then Steelback has nothing. Looks like he fail flashed into the wall. That's kind of painful as well. So maybe that's the karma coming through for Steelback.
Yeah. I mean, this is where it's kind of like every man for himself on Vitality, because they're so split up, there's not much they can do. Nukeduck, he gets away with his life on that one. But yeah, they lose out almost a tower on bottom second tier. They lose out on the Infernal Dragon, very important one that NIP were able to pick up. And honestly, we talked about Prophet and how on this Shen it was going to be a different type of game, but look at this. He's got 2-0 and he's on a side lane.
Yeah, he's been involved in the kills. Not only that, the 2 assists alongside as well. So Prophet has been good as a team player in this game. This hasn't been about him carrying so much. It's been about the team grouping with the Tahm Kench, the Ashe arrow. That's what has worked well for NIP in this game. And realistically, if they can continue snowballing like they did in game 1 against the Unicorns, this could be another game win for them.
Yeah. Well, for all that, though, it is a very close gold game, right? Like, it's only 1,000 separating, whereas we saw in the last game, Vitality were able to put up this lead that just kept going and going and going. And NIP, they're actually losing out on towers here because of Vitality able to knock down that last inner, but it's a slow march, right? They keep doing a little bit of chip damage, doing a little bit of chip damage, and they are finding these fights, which is crucial. The
problem with the slow march could be, though, that this Xayah will scale into the game. Obviously, Orianna, everybody knows how good she is in the late game, but as Xayah is quite a recent champion, a lot of people underestimate when you're going this Essence Reaver build, you're building towards late game damage. In team fights, you output so much damage and get a good number of rotations of that stun from the feathers being called back. You can get 2 or 3 off because of the cooldown reduction that Essence Reaver gives you, and that means it's difficult to stick on top of a Xayah in a very hectic team fight.
That is very true, but we have to give some credit to the Ashe as well, right? Yeah. If HeaQ doesn't make a big positional error like what ended up losing them in the last game, Ashe is still able to dish a lot of consistent damage.
That's right. The one thing... Oh,
there's the arrow.
Watch a fight first, maybe. The one thing you've got to watch with specifically Ashe and Xayah is if Ashe fires the arrow first, Xayah ults it. If Xayah ults first, you fire the Ashe arrow at Xayah and you stun her. That's what happened to Hans Sama 2 weeks ago, and it cost Misfits against H2K. You cannot afford to use that ultimate unless you are securing guaranteed kills on an Ashe.
Well, that's what Steelback was able to do in the last game, that's for sure, but as the tables have turned, we'll see what HeaQ is able to come up with. 20 minutes into this game, it has been all NIP for kills, but once again, close in the gold game. Trying to play it out on the sides, sending Nagne top, sending Prophet bottom. Wash, rinse, repeat. They have the globals to work with.
We didn't need to look at any crime scenes on this one for the 10 to 15 because
they never had a lead.
Yeah, exactly. NIP were in the lead on this one, so chalk that up in the number of games now for Vitality not having a lead, but they have been playing okay from behind. Getting the towers, denying some of NIP's attempts like that mid lane fight we just saw. But I think, again, we've got to look at the improvements that NIP have showed us because we haven't focused too much on them as individuals and as a team up until this game. And realistically, being even is good, but we asked, can they close games from being ahead? This now is the time they need to prove they can close this game out, utilizing this composition that is about fighting, grouping, getting those engages. We need to see them actually carry it over the game line.
Yeah. Team always has a chance to develop when you're in the LCS, playing against the best teams week after week after week in the European region. NIP have had a rough go of things for sure because the team did get thrown together. A lot of players, some experience across the board. You talk about Prophet and Nagne coming in from LCK. Sprattel obviously on a number of teams here. Shook going back quite a ways, and HeaQ even having his time on Giants. But you need the team to kind of come together, to play well together, to build that synergy. And we hadn't seen that in the very beginning, but it's been a slow process. They have been growing it. By the same token, Vitality have actually been doing that as well.
And we also have to keep in mind that just because a team, this sounds really weird, because a team got no wins in the first half of the season, or split, doesn't mean they're going to end at the bottom. Remember Roccat?
Oh, yeah.
They went 0 series wins up until a game against Origin. And then
that
suddenly went on a 6 series winning streak, beating G2. So I'm not really saying it's going to happen for NIP, but their current position doesn't necessarily mean that's where they're going to end the summer split.
No, that's true. But there's a one problem for NIP is there's no Origin to play now.
That's true.
Yeah. They're going to have to find somebody else.
Well, it would be bad if they were playing Origin, because that would mean they'd be playing in Challenger Series. That wouldn't end up well for them.
Yeah, well, there's definitely still a lot of chances left to prove that they are not a team for the promotion tournament, but they really need to start taking it to Vitality here. If they close out this game, force number 3, that starts to set the narrative that they can start turning their fortunes around, because we have seen growth out of them, not just against the Unicorns, but just somewhat better play in early games. Can they keep this going? Can they close it out? They still have this gold lead.
Whereas Vitality at this point may be eyeing up a fight and may be eyeing up the opportunity to get into that playoff contention. Now, they are quite far behind the likes of Splice and obviously H2K and the Unicorns, but a win here and a win there, going back into the group play, a win over Splice would give you a good chance of maybe jumping them. Now, Vitality still, I think, are a long way away from those wins, but they've been looking better. They've been looking much better over the last few weeks. And again, Nukeduck with a good laning performance is on form again.
Yeah, I mean, we're not seeing him get like crazy flashy plays in the lane this series, but he hasn't had to, right? Last game he was on Lucian. He just did what he needed. This time, if Vitality are allowed to scale into this late game, we've all seen those multi-million ELO shockwaves.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say, Pyre, is that we don't need to see him making these flashy laning plays. He's playing Orianna.
Yeah. Well, he's well on his way too, right? Like the Merlinomicon.
Laner until 30 minutes in.
Step 1 complete. Step 2, now he's got the Luden's Echo. I'm going to wait until that Orianna is just stacking on the AP, and it's going to be real hard for NIP if they clump up.
Is that the NIP game plan? Like step 1, step 2, don't know what step 3 is,
well,
step 4 is profit.
It's always going to end with profit. I mean, he's been a pretty big part of their team, too. We started to see Prophet in previous weeks really come into his own on this team. And it's always rough if you're coming from another region, especially as a young player, and you don't speak the language, to kind of develop yourself. Even if you had a pedigree of playing on SK Telecom, you've got to ease up expectations to some degree, and we've started to see him actually fulfilling those, especially when it comes to side lane control.
Of all the teams to have a pedigree from as well, SKT is like maybe the biggest accolade you could come from if you're not playing for them anymore. Can't be easy to basically go from an SKT lineup and then have so many people expect a lot from you. But for Vitality right now, they're expecting a fight around this top side. They want to make sure that they can control this Baron area despite being slightly behind, trying to control NIP. And you can see NIP here, maybe not super confident that they're as far ahead as 2 Drakes, or 2 Ocean Drakes and an Infernal, and now up in towers, or at least even in towers.
Yeah, I mean, that gives them some extra needed gold, right? Prophet was finally able to finish it off, so even on this Shen, he's still able to side push. He's got the Titanic Hydra to be able to help him out with that. He can survive most of Nukeduck and Cabochard's damage with the Spirit Visage. So it seems like the game plan doesn't change too much despite the fact that he's on the Shen.
Okay, this kind of bothers me. I'm just going to say it. Shook walked through his own jungle, didn't use his sweeper in the obvious ward spots. Now, that's because they have control wards and they're trying to control the Baron pit. That's what I was asking them to do. But you've also got to watch out behind you. You're against a Rumble. He's going to find any kind of position to get a teleport ward into an equalizer down. And this means that every moment that NIP step forward, there's threat of a fight happening. Just because those wards are there. Look, there's maybe 4 wards, 5 wards as they start dying that Cabochard could have been TPing to.
Yeah, NIP playing a little heedless there, not stopping.
Like, what if you sweep that ward? Sweep the ward. You know there is likely to be a ward there. Like, That's frustrating.
Well, they can't do spring cleaning. It's summer.
Sprattel's getting caught, has to flash out because they were standing on a ward, and Sprattel moved out of the lane without sweeping the ward.
I feel like it's not going to change until they get punished by it, though. Like, Vitality are kind of trying to creep up and go in there, but they're not making the big plays. They've kind of been easing up on the gas. Last time around, they played a very controlled game. This time, they find themselves down. They're trying to wait and scale it out. They're not making any plays.
Oh, here we go. Here's the play.
And IP are making them. They look for Nukeduck here. He's going to have to shockwave and take that lantern out to safety, but he didn't hit on enough people. Double taunt on for Profit. Looking for Nukeduck. In comes Nagne, trying to get the deletion, but it's not going to happen. Steelback with a big feather storm here as Cabochard has TP'd in, and he gets swallowed up by Sprattel here. Spitting back out. Shook, staying nice and safe. Nobody goes down.
That was the second, dare I say it, bad equalizer out of Cabochard. Maybe he was looking to kind of defend his team if that's where the fight was about to take place, but it looked like he had maybe Shook and one other person like dead to rights in that corridor between Blue and Wolves. I want to watch the fight again to see whether it was possible for them to look for a fight.
That was a bit chaotic.
Maybe I'm being a little overly critical of Cabochard, but it felt like it should have been on the rest of NIP. But look, NIP are going to go for this Baron. This is going to try and rush it down. They've got the Ashe.
They took some time on it, but now they've decided to fully commit. No Mountain Drakes. It's going to be a little harder for them to do it, but in comes Djoko here. Shook waiting ready on that smite, but Vitality know this is happening. Cabochard is not here. If they want to turn for the fight, it would be a 5v4. Looking for the Kazakhs, but it's Nagne is looking around the side for Nukeduck instead, and NIP have managed to stay on top of the Baron, smite it down, and take it away. Yeah,
Vitality not having teleport really cost them on this. Vitality needed more out of the previous engage, and NIP are able to turn for the Baron, get themselves there quickly, and rush it down. So, Vitality struggling to contain some of what NIP are doing. While they haven't been losing out on kills, they haven't been quite able to contend with NIP's ability to group quickly and just push Vitality back into their own territory.
Yeah. And it was going to be a rough smite fight anyways. Okay. You saw Shook had 2 levels on him, but let's see the start of this fight that set it up eventually.
So, Vander was the one absorbing the Ashe arrow. That could have gone a whole lot worse if that had hit Nukeduck. And then, so Nukeduck manages to get out. Here comes the equalizer from Cabochard, and he puts it, I think he thought the fight was still drifting down. Now, he would have got good damage on Shook, Sprattel, and Profit. I can see where the thought process was going there. So Cabochard trying to throw out a bit more of a defensive one, where it's like, if they fight on my carries, maybe we can roast them. But unfortunately, they didn't do enough damage to NIP that NIP just go, okay, we'll TP in on the Baron.
Yeah. Well, and Nukeduck burns his shockwave right at the beginning of that when he gets caught, right? If he had held that, taken the lantern out to safety, it would have been maybe a different story. But Sprattel, it's a bit of a sad story for him. Doesn't even get to pop his gray health as he's collapsed on by Vitality.
So looks like he'd put a control ward down in the middle lane and then just got caught out for doing it. But Nagne's pushing the tower, Profit's pushing on the bottom lane. This is the difficulty of playing up against a 1-3-1 when you have Baron. Okay, now you got the Tahm Kench in the middle lane, but look, Vitality aren't committing to a further play. They're waiting in a push. They've got to get another kill at least, or contend with Nagne, who's pushing. Vitality are not respecting anything right now.
He's on the base right now. Cabochard's going to go ahead and try to clear away the wave, but still, that's already down to half its health. Now Vitality decide to start on the newly spawned Dragon, and Profit gets denied by Vander, but he's all by himself right now. The Lantern takes Djoko in. Profit is still big enough. Ragnarok was on, stopping the arrow, but Profit nearly kills him.
And now they turn for the Infernal Drake, because they pushed out the top lane. Nagne has stayed in the top lane. They know there's no teleport for Cabochard. So Cabochard either has to regroup with the rest of the team or address Nagne's tower push. And look, Nagne is just going to play this carefully. He knows he has a Baron buff cannon minion there, and that will do enough damage so that over time, they're always getting objectives. This time it's an Infernal Drake. That tower is dangerously low that if Nagne even gets a couple of seconds back on that for the duration of this Baron buff, that'll go down as well. NIP are starting to prove maybe they're accelerating this lead a little bit better than Vitality did in Game 1. They're trying to be active on the map.
And they don't have to fight to do it. They're just pulling all the members of Vitality all over the place. And Profit is becoming a legitimate threat. No, he's not the most massive damage dealer, but look what he was doing to Djoko. In a 1v3 situation, nobody from Vitality wanted to take this guy on. And normally you want to gank the teleport, right? But I don't think anyone wants to head down there and tangle with him.
No, nobody really wants to duel Profit on his own right now. As you said, even 1 versus 3 was able to output a lot of damage because Vander didn't have too much to offer himself. And right now, the biggest problem for NIP and where we're going to see them focused is mid lane tower. They need to crack through that. Otherwise, it'll be difficult to close the game out. Because look, while we're in this state of the game, Prophet and Nagne cannot push the side lanes effectively unless they can bring Shen with them. But here's Djoko as well. Look, they get denied because the rest of NIP can't cross quickly enough. Even with a Tahm Kench, you need those jungle pathways open.
Let's see if this opens enough time for them to take down the tower. It looks like they've got the stun off onto Vander, but no follow through. And Prophet couldn't get back and close the gap there. Nagne also a little bit far behind. They'll stop to clear out some vision. See if they can make their way out of town in time.
That's the mechanic we were talking about. The invulnerability or the untargetable during the Feather Storm as opposed to the Ashe Arrow. They have roughly the same cooldown between the two. Of course, Steelback has got a little bit more cooldown reduction coming from his build, but it's about even between the two. So expect to see that traded back and forth in the team fights. And one of them is going to be way more detrimental than the other. Whichever is used second is likely to win out.
Well, while the AD carries can definitely match each other, I really want to keep an eye on the way these mid laners have been playing it out, because we're starting to see the items creeping up on Nukeduck. Once again, his Void Staff was completed. He now has a needlessly large rod, probably looking for the Rabadon's Death Cap. And, you know, that's the 4 item spike. That's where we start looking at those massive shockwave deletions. But we need to see if NIP can take care of him a little bit faster than all that. I'm looking at Nagne. I'm looking at Prophet. Can they get the taunt? Can they get the picks?
And
that's going to determine the fight.
Of course, HeaQ is also building towards decent late game damage with the Infinity Edge himself, the rapid fire cannon. Looking for that critical damage in the late game, trying to make sure they have more of a late game threat, not just a LeBlanc, which we know can end up falling off. Hasn't snowballed super heavily, but still has good damage.
Absolutely, but right now it's Vitality that actually make the push here, and just a small wave of minions they're going to be able to knock down the inner tower without a whole lot of response. Because if you have 2 people on the top and the bottom.
Nagne's got it.
1 tower going down, and now Vitality are trying to retreat. The tower on the bottom taken. They trade a 2-for-1, and inhibitors are open season right now.
Perfect time for 1-3-1 cam here as Deficio was breaking it down. 1 member in the top side with TP, 3 in the middle lane, 1 in the bottom lane. And NIP are continuing this push. They have nearly got the inhibitor as well. And Prophet is pushing. They got the middle lane tower. This is beautiful out of NIP.
You take our inner tower, we will take your base. And NIP are managing to get away with all that. They really are ninjas. Sneaky, sneaky all over the map.
They certainly aren't sleeping on this game either, because certainly they're taking it to Vitality here. Nearly getting closer to a 10,000 gold lead. Still a little way away, but with Baron coming up in 50 seconds time, NIP have just assumed a lot of control over the map. The Vitality, there's a lot of dangerous areas to walk through.
Yeah, and that's the crucial thing, right? It's just like last game, but in reverse. Control, except this time NIP are doing it towards dragging Vitality everywhere, not letting them group, not letting themselves fall victim to that big shockwave.
But what Vitality have done to try and address this is you can see the vision control up the mid lane, at least on the flanks, trying to make sure they can catch somebody from NIP when they're bouncing between the lanes. Problem is, NIP have been firmly with Nagne in the top lane, Prophet in the bottom lane, and haven't been crossing out of mid lane all that often. And with a Tahm Kench, it's difficult to kill that Ashe in the middle lane. Shook can utilize the W, and okay, it's not going to slow unless they're isolated, but it's still a deterrent on Vitality pushing forward. Are they going to try and rush this?
Well, they might just do it right now.
There's a lot of damage here between this Rumble and this side, but look, Nagne on the bottom side, and the fight is going to start. Prophet going to try and go in. Can Shook steal it?
Oh, he's on the backside. Here comes the teleport. He goes in a little bit too late. It's secured up by Cabochard, but now Prophet coming in to keep Shook safe as they look for Steelback in the back line. They are going to be able to take him out, but Shook is going to fall first, and it looks like this fight is getting a little hectic here as Sprattel swallows up his ADC, and Prophet is left by himself. Nagne coming in a little bit late for round number 2. They get a double kill on the side of NIP. HeaQ starting to pop off here as Nukeduck and Djoko are running away with that Baron buff, trying to keep it safe. Cabochard being hunted down by Sprattel, and the rest of NIP are looking to collapse. It looks like we should be in for only 2 members of Vitality surviving with the buff.
Yeah, if they can actually catch him, because Cabochard's an important one to take down. With that teleport being available, if he can keep the Baron buff, he's got the Empowered Recall, but look, he can't find a safe spot. He has to try and execute here, but that'll lose him his Baron buff. He knows he's dead.
Execute.
Nope.
Nothing doing. The minions will come over. Prophet wanted to steal it away. But at the end of the day, NIP take down 3. So Vitality managed to sneak it out with the Baron buff. And that was a messy, messy fight.
I mean, it gives Vitality a little bit in the sense of gold and the Baron buff itself. How does Cabochard get this? Shook has smite, so does Djoko. Neither jungle has smite that down. Wow, just Cabochard being able to get it. And NIP trying to take the fight. Shook ends up dying. Prophet tanks through a lot of damage, and Steelback is the AD carry that falls first, as Sprattel was able to keep HeaQ alive. And then this is the point where Nagne has a lot of freedom on this fight. He's level 18, can dart in and out very quickly, and actually ends up giving up the chase on Nukeduck. Looked like NIP were trying to get Nukeduck. They ended up turning back around for Cabochard.
All right, well, now it's Elder Dragon time. You go from one objective to the other, and this is a big one for NIP, but Djoko is here, spotted on the ward. He has no flash. He couldn't get over the wall if he wanted to, but this is still going to be a slow objective, and Prophet is still on the top lane. NIP, they're controlling this one. Vander throws the hook, and it's not going to connect onto Nagne as he goes back in. Nukeduck will be looking for a steal. There's the blast code. Djoko's inside the pit right now, and this is going mad. He's got to take the lantern back out. No way for him to get this one now as he throws the hook in a last-second chance. It's Shook who gets the smite down. NIP running away with it.
NIP with the reset on the Elder Drake. Djoko jumps in using the blast cone and nearly ends up dying.
Do not want.
That was nearly a very rough end to that for Djoko. Obviously, as you talked about earlier, not having flash, but here's the fight. Nukeduck out of the side lane.
They want to find him, and they get the stun off, and boom, they just take him down to 0. Equalizer thrown down, but it's not going to be enough right now as they pull in the Kha'Zix. Shook gonna get swallowed up by Sprattel. Vitality are still strong enough with a couple of Baron buffs to try and take this fight, but Prophet is a madman in this back line right now, trying to pick one off. Flayed back in. HeaQ is taken down. Djoko, it's only Steelback, Vander, Cabochard left to try and defend, and NIP are looking to close out a win. The double kill for HeaQ. Shook hopping in. A triple kill for HeaQ, and NIP are gonna take a win.
NIP crushing through the fight against Vitality. They were able to group, utilizing the Tahm Kench Shen combination, bringing 3 people to the fight when Vitality just weren't ready. And they're going to take a second game for this split.
There's the ace, and just shy of 40 minutes on the clock. NIP will take down the Nexus towers, grab themselves a Nexus, equalize the series. Go Ninjas, go Ninjas, go!
NIP, when they're playing like this, look like a really solid team, constantly trying to get fights going, utilizing the Tahm Kench, throwing out that Ashe arrow as often as they can, trying to pick off Vitality. I want to see more of this NIP, the one that is fighting and trying to get these early game leads. They invested so much in the early game into keeping Shook in the game so that Djoko didn't push him out like in game 1. And it works. They're able to get Prophet ahead. Even on a Shen, Prophet looked great in this game.
And this was smart League of Legends from NIP. This was coordinated. Yes, they made mistakes. Yes, Vitality found a couple of ways to get back into the game, but this was so much better than what we saw from this team at the start of the split, even a few weeks ago. This is the kind of growth we want to see, and this is the team that's at the bottom of the standings. This bodes well.
It's better. It does bode well for NIP. One thing for this series that I don't know whether it bodes well or not, but it seems like whichever team has Ashe just really ends up crushing these last fights and picking up a bunch of kills. That was a 6-0-3 performance out of HeaQ.
Yeah, he got 3 of them right at the end there. Yeah. I mean, he did what he needed to do.
Better performance out of NIP. Good grouping. Nagne on the side lane as well, though. On that 1-3-1, it wasn't all just about fights. It was about controlling the side lanes, pushing out. Like that sequence when Nagne and Prophet took top and bottom in Hib Tower at the same time, that was great by NIP.
Yeah, stretching Vitality all across the map. So NIP are going for the comeback victory here against Vitality. So let's leave it to our analysts to break down game 2.
Thank you very much, Pyra. And I want to start by picking up what Stress said. It seems that the winning team is the team that has Ashe, and the Official is always very happy when Ashe gets picked in terms of priority. In only 26.7% of the games in the EU LCS, he is picked, she is picked or banned. And just tell us quickly why for the lower tier teams, she is such a good pick.
Basically, it's much easier to play the game if you bring some sort of long-range engage. And while obviously sometimes you can dodge around an Ashe arrow, most of the time you will hit a few each game that can start fights. And we saw that actually in this game as well, how when NIP were under pressure, it was HeaQ with the AShe arrow that allowed him to get some kills to then further set up that 1-3-1.
That we will see later on in the game. First, let's take a look at the early game. Game 1, Vitality came all guns blazing. Game 2, NIP got first blood bottom lane, then make a play with the Tahm Kench. So they're making moves in the early game, NIP in this one specifically, and we know that they play well with the lead, so
yeah.
on them.
I mean, remember last game we talked about how it's up to Djoko to stop HeaQ from getting ahead early on, because that is how NIP get their advantages very often. This was obviously just a great play with both Prophet and HeaQ together, and then it leads into a top lane fight where Vander finds himself very overextended, and suddenly Vitality actually not winning the early game.
Quick question on that. When I see, obviously, a Tahm Kench who has a cross-map ultimate, you see Shen who has the ability to move across the map. Are those things that, as a team that's still figuring out how to win games, are these good? Or is that also a danger because you can end up on the wrong side of the map completely if you make a wrong decision?
Obviously, if you make a wrong decision and ultis goes on cooldown and you don't get anything from it, they're very weak picks. Like Shen, when he doesn't use his ulti, he doesn't really offer a whole lot to his team. But I think what NIP showed here was that these are some of the champions they have been practicing quite a lot. And then you can actually use the Shen ulti and the Tahm Kench ulti here to catch out people and maybe also kind of prevent yourself from being caught with your pants down, because you have these extra tools to get into a fight where one guy might be a little bit overextended.
Talking about that, getting caught and finding the advantage on the map, we talked a lot about Vitality using the 1-3-1 as opposed to the 1-4 in game 1. And you wanted to break down how they try and go for the 1-4 in this case, but actually how NIP was successful with the 1-3-1 in the end.
Yeah, I just wanted to basically go back to the point we made last game where we explained the 1-4 and the 1-3-1 setups. And we have this replay that kind of shows how you want to play with, of course, your AD carry and support in these side lanes split pushing. So it is starting pause. We zoomed all the way out to see everything, and I put in a few numbers right there. Number 1 and 2, of course, AD carry support sitting top lane. Number 3, the jungler. 4, Nukeduck. 5, Cabochard. So when you have the 1-4 comms, you obviously can't just abandon all the lanes. So you need your AD carry support to push out one side lane, while your mid laner, the Orianna, can't really move. She just wave clears mid. And the objective is, once you push out this lane with Steelback and Vander number 1 and 2 in the top lane, you move into the mid lane and you join your mid lane and you have this group of 4 guys. Because then the enemy team, they're stuck defending these 3 lanes. You can see how Nagne has to go up and defend this top lane wave, while Vander and Steelback, they're gonna move mid lane and join Nukeduck. And this simply creates a numbers advantage for Vitality when they can then push in this mid lane tower. Because if you look at the minimap, guys, LeBlanc is sitting top lane catching that big wave that was pushed in earlier by Vander and Steelback, and that now allows Vitality to get damage on tower.
So is it their objective to get the entire tower now, or just chip away at it?
Get as much as you can. If you can chip away on it and get it low so you can do this a second time, then that's fine. And well, we jump a minute forward and we get the second time. We just swapped it around. Number 1 and 2 once again down the bottom lane is Vander and Steelback. And just like before, the objective is to push this lane so that whoever is sitting here from NIP is forced to just sit and defend. And meanwhile, Vander and Steelback can go mid lane, join Nukeduck, join Djoko, who's coming from base. Here's the number 3 down the bottom. And you have this 4-man group that can actually take the tower. The answer from NIP is to TP into the mid lane with Shen, with LeBlanc, collapse on the guys pushing. There was no ward set up though for NIP to really TP on from Nagne. And what just basically happens is they are stuck once again in these side lanes with Prophet and Nagne, while Vitality, when we run the clip here, are just walking straight into the mid lane and taking a very free objective. And that's how you play this 4-man group. You always send that AD carry support to go push a wave together in the side lane, because obviously your AD carry can't do it alone, you need some backup. And then you go mid lane and join that mid laner that's just pushing 24/7. Orianna can do it, Victor can do it, you know, a lot of these Syndra, a lot of these mages can just sit and push mid, join them, and notice how it's 3 guys from NIP and 4 members from Vitality, so NIP can't really fight, and they have to surrender this tower.
But Martin, outside of just that mid-turret, I didn't see that many positives outside of Vitality, and I saw a good NIP, so
Very
what are
true.
they doing correctly?
AShe arrow hype right there.
Yeah.
So when you're getting pressured and you're kind of like, damn, we're losing on the map right now, we need to find a way back in, AShe arrow can actually help you start a fight like we see here. Then the TP happens from Nagne as well, and instantly you get a fight in favor of NIP. So despite them losing that mid tower to this, you know, setup from Vitality, one good engage, and you get a few kills, you get a Drake from that, you go right back into the game. And that's one of the reasons I really like running engage on the AD carry when you're playing this 1-3-1 split push comp, because it allows then your split pushers to join the fight after the engage already happened.
And let's take a look at the Baron that Vitality try and go for because they are feeling threatened, and because of the 1-3-1 from LeBlanc and Shen, they are also being pushed in. They feel like they need to do this, obviously.
Yeah, they want to start Baron to force teleports, to be like, Nagne, don't push our bot lane, come join this fight. You should come team fight us, because Vitality's composition is built to team fight. So once they start the Baron, they get the TPs as well, but now you just have to be able to win this fight, because this is what your comp is drafted for. If you then end up losing the fight to the split pushers as well, well, then there's really no way of stopping, you know, the next time they're going to these side lanes, because now you're just falling behind in gold.
At least Vitality got the Baron, but there wasn't really much to do.
I think NIP actually showed this game that Nagne and Prophet did a very good job playing the split push game, and the communication was a little bit better than I expected when they were actually playing all 3 lanes. I also just think if you are Vitality, like, when you play the team fighting comp, when you get the team fight, if you can't win that fight due to some mistakes, you're not going to win the game. And the hype train
is dead.
It went like this and it crashed right down. I don't 100% believe in the Vitality hype, but I think they're going to bounce back still and take a 2-1 win.
Okay, we'll see if that happens, and at least we got to see something quite good out of NIP as well, and they could get their first series win, so... Win-win overall.
I guess everyone is a winner here.
Everyone's a winner. Well, one game standing between the Ninjas and Pyjamas and their first series of the split. We will see if they can do that indeed versus Vitality when we return.